Have you ever been in the middle of watching your favorite TV show, working on something important, or simply lying comfortably in bed, when suddenly you felt that familiar pressure in your lower abdomen telling you it's time to go to the bathroom, but you thought to yourself, just 5 more minutes, I'll go during the next commercial break? It seems so innocent, doesn't it? After all, what harm could a few extra minutes possibly do? But what if I told you that this simple habit of delaying, of holding your urine just a little bit longer, especially if you're over 50 years old, is quietly creating the perfect conditions for recurring urinary tract infections, chronic bladder dysfunction, and even permanent damage to your kidneys? The truth is that your bladder after age 50 is fundamentally different from the one you had in your younger years. The muscles have weakened, the protective lining has thinned, and your body's natural ability to fight off bacteria has slowed down significantly. Every single time you ignore that urge to urinate, you're not just experiencing a moment of discomfort, you're actually creating an environment where bacteria can thrive, where your bladder walls stretch beyond healthy limits, and where a cascade of problems begins that could have been prevented simply by listening to your body. If you've ever experienced that burning sensation when you urinate, or if you've had infections that keep coming back no matter how many times you take antibiotics, then you need to hear what I'm about to share with you. Before we continue, I want you to click that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you're about to become part of a community where we talk openly about intimate health issues that most people are too embarrassed to discuss with anyone. This channel is like having a caring health consultant in your living room, someone who gives you real solutions that actually work. Subscribe right now so you never miss information that could change your health for the better. Today, I'm revealing 5 specific ways that the habit of holding your urine is destroying your urinary system, and more importantly, what you can do starting today to reverse the damage and protect yourself moving forward. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why those recurring infections keep happening, and you'll have a clear plan to finally break free from this frustrating cycle. Number 5 on our list is something called bladder overstretching, and it happens every single time you decide to wait just a little longer before using the bathroom. Your bladder is designed with elastic muscle fibers that expand and contract to hold and release urine efficiently. Think of it like a rubber band that works perfectly when used properly, but loses its snap when stretched too far too often. When you're over 50, those muscle fibers aren't as resilient as they used to be. They've been working for decades, and they simply don't bounce back the way they did when you were younger. Every time you hold your urine beyond the point where your body signals you to go, you're forcing your bladder to stretch beyond its healthy capacity. And over time, this leads to a condition where your bladder can no longer contract strongly enough to empty itself completely. Let me tell you about Sarah, a 61-year-old woman who came to see me after battling urinary tract infections for nearly 2 years. Sarah had spent 30 years as an executive assistant, and during her career, she trained herself to hold her urine for hours because meetings and tight schedules made bathroom breaks inconvenient. Even after retirement, she carried this habit with her, often holding it while gardening, reading, or shopping, because stopping what she was doing felt like an interruption. What Sarah didn't realize was that each time she waited too long, she was stretching her bladder to hold much more than the healthy limit of about 16 ounces. Research shows that chronic overstretching can reduce your bladder's ability to contract properly by up to 40% in people over 50, and this creates what doctors call incomplete emptying. When your bladder can't empty completely anymore, that leftover urine sitting at the bottom becomes a perfect breeding ground for the bacteria that cause infections. The solution for Sarah was something called timed voiding. Instead of waiting until she absolutely had to go, she started using the bathroom every 2 to 3 hours like clockwork, whether she felt a strong urge or not. This simple change allowed her bladder muscles to work within their natural range again, and within just 6 weeks, her recurring infections stopped completely. She told me she felt like she had a new bladder, one that finally worked with her instead of against her. The key lesson here is that your bladder sends you signals for a very important reason, and after 50, you need to respect those signals more than ever. Before, your body is telling you it's time to empty before problems develop, not after. But bladder stretching is just the beginning of what happens when you regularly hold your urine, and what comes next is even more concerning. Number 4 involves the protective lining inside your bladder, and understanding this could be the key to finally stopping those infections that keep coming back. The inside of your bladder is coated with a protective layer called the gag layer, which acts like a waterproof shield between your urine and the delicate tissue underneath. When you're younger, this shield is thick and strong, constantly renewing itself and doing an excellent job protecting your bladder. But after age 50, this layer becomes thinner and more fragile, and here's where holding your urine becomes particularly dangerous. When urine sits in your bladder for extended periods, especially if you're not drinking enough water and your urine is concentrated, it becomes acidic and filled with irritating waste products. This concentrated acidic urine starts eating away at that protective layer, creating tiny breaks and weak spots in your natural defense system. Once those breaks appear, bacteria that naturally enter your urinary tract throughout the day can attach directly to the exposed bladder wall tissue and start an infection much more easily. I treated a patient named Michael, a 58-year-old delivery driver who held his urine for hours every day because his route didn't allow for convenient bathroom stops. He drank coffee to stay alert, which made his urine even more concentrated, and by the time he finally could stop to use the bathroom, the damage was already happening. Tests revealed that Michael's protective bladder lining had significant damage, with weak spots that made him incredibly vulnerable to infections. We worked on 2 things. First, he switched to water and started drinking consistently throughout his day to keep his urine diluted. Second, we added supplements that help rebuild that protective layer, including compounds that research has shown can strengthen bladder defenses. Within 2 months, Michael's chronic infections became much less frequent, and after 4 months, he went longer without an infection than he had in 3 years. Let's pause for a moment because I want to ask you something personal. How many times have you felt that urge to urinate and told yourself you'd go in just a few more minutes, but those minutes turned into an hour or even longer? It's like your daily routine has trained you to put your bladder last on your priority list, isn't it? If you're nodding your head right now, I want you to do something for me. Go down to the comments and share your experience. It can be as simple as saying, "I've been holding my urine for years and never knew it could cause these problems." Your comment might seem small to you, but for someone else reading it who's going through the exact same thing, it could be the wake-up call they need to finally make a change. You're not alone in this, and your story matters. Comment now while this is fresh in your mind. Number 3 is about what happens to urine when it just sits in your bladder for too long, and this is where things get really concerning. Your urinary system is designed to work like a constantly flowing river, always moving, always flushing out any bacteria that might try to make your bladder their home. This natural flushing is one of your best defenses against infection, but it only works if you're actually emptying your bladder regularly. When you hold your urine, you turn that flowing river into a stagnant pond, and just like a real pond, stagnant urine becomes the perfect environment for bacteria to multiply. The bacteria that cause most urinary infections, especially E. coli, can double their numbers every 20 to 30 minutes when conditions are right, and warm, still urine in a bladder that's not being emptied is exactly what they need to thrive. Research shows that bacteria start forming protective communities called biofilms on your bladder walls after just 4 to 6 hours of sitting urine, and once these biofilms form, they become incredibly hard to kill, even with strong antibiotics. This is why some people feel like their infections never really go away. They clear up for a while, but then come right back. The bacteria were never fully eliminated because they were hiding in these protected biofilm colonies, waiting for another chance to cause problems. I had a patient named Jennifer, a 54-year-old librarian who would hold her urine during her entire 4-hour shifts because she didn't want to leave her desk. She thought that since it didn't hurt while she was waiting, everything was fine. But by the time she started feeling burning and urgency, she already had a chronic biofilm infection that had been building for months. We had to take a completely different approach to her treatment, not just antibiotics, but a full protocol to break down those biofilms while establishing a strict 2-hour bathroom schedule and increasing her water intake dramatically. We also had her start taking D-mannose, a natural sugar that research has shown can prevent E. coli bacteria from adhering to bladder walls. A clinical trial found that women who took D-mannose regularly had a 76% lower rate of recurrent UTIs compared to those who didn't, and the effect was particularly strong in women over 60. After 3 months on this comprehensive protocol, Jennifer was finally free of the infections that had plagued her for nearly a year, and she's remained infection-free for over 18 months now by maintaining her regular bathroom schedule and preventive supplements. The critical takeaway here is that the longer urine sits in your bladder, the more opportunity bacteria have to establish themselves in ways that become progressively harder to treat. Number 2 is something that often gets overlooked in discussions about urinary health, but it's absolutely crucial for anyone over 50 who wants to avoid recurring infections and maintain long-term bladder function. It's about what happens to the pressure balance in your urinary system when you regularly hold your urine past your body's natural capacity. Your bladder and urethra work together as a coordinated system with very specific pressure relationships that keep urine flowing in the right direction, from your kidneys down to your bladder, and then out through your urethra when you urinate. There are sphincter muscles at the junction between your bladder and urethra that act like one-way valves, opening when you consciously decide to urinate and staying closed the rest of the time to prevent leakage. But when you chronically hold your urine and allow bladder pressure to build to excessive levels, especially repeatedly over months and years, something problematic starts to happen. The excessive pressure from an overfilled bladder can actually cause small amounts of urine to be forced backward into your urethra, even while the main sphincter appears closed. This is particularly concerning because the urethra is the main pathway through which bacteria enter your urinary system from the outside world. Under normal circumstances, when you urinate completely and regularly, any bacteria that have made their way into the lower urethra get flushed out before they can travel upward into the bladder. But when this backward flow occurs, urine that may already contain bacteria gets pushed back into areas where it can pool and allow those bacteria to multiply. And then when you eventually do urinate, this bacteria-laden urine flows back down into your bladder, essentially infecting yourself. I treated a patient named Dorothy, a 71-year-old retired nurse who had worked 12-hour shifts in a busy emergency room where bathroom breaks were luxuries she rarely had time for. She'd become expert at holding her urine for entire shifts, sometimes 10 to 12 hours, and even though she was now retired, she'd never retrained her bladder to function normally. She was experiencing urinary tract infections every 4 to 6 weeks, and each infection seemed to be getting worse despite appropriate antibiotic treatment. Specialized testing revealed that Dorothy's bladder pressure was reaching levels nearly double what's considered healthy, and this excessive pressure was causing intermittent backward flow visible on imaging studies. Dorothy's treatment required complete retraining of her bladder habits. We implemented a timed voiding schedule starting at every 90 minutes and gradually extending to every 2 to 3 hours, as her bladder relearned how to signal appropriately. We also incorporated pelvic floor physical therapy, because years of holding had weakened the very muscles that should have been supporting proper function. Research has demonstrated that pelvic floor rehabilitation in women over 65 can improve bladder regulation and reduce UTI recurrence by up to 68% when combined with behavioral modifications. Within 4 months, Dorothy's infections became rare rather than routine, occurring only once in the following 14 months. She described feeling like she had a completely different bladder. And now we arrive at number 1, the most serious and potentially life-threatening consequence of regularly holding your urine, especially for people over 50. It's called ascending kidney infection, and it represents what happens when bacteria from your bladder travel upward to your kidneys. Your urinary system is a connected network that includes your kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra, all working together. The kidneys are particularly vulnerable because they're constantly filtering about 120 to 150 quarts of blood every day. Under normal circumstances, urine flows in only one direction, from the kidneys down through the ureters into the bladder and then out. There are one-way valves where your ureters connect to your bladder, designed to prevent urine from flowing backward. But when you regularly hold your urine and allow bladder pressure to build to excessive levels, you're creating a pressure situation that can overcome those protective valves. When this happens, bacteria-laden urine from your bladder can actually flow backward up your ureters toward your kidneys. Once bacteria reach your kidneys and establish an infection there, you're dealing with a kidney infection that can cause severe pain, high fever, nausea, vomiting, and if left untreated, can lead to permanent kidney damage or even death. Let me tell you about James, a 69-year-old man who nearly lost his life because of what started as a simple habit of holding his urine too long. James was an avid fisherman who loved spending entire days out on the lake, and he'd trained himself to hold his urine for hours because he didn't want to interrupt his fishing. Over several years, James had experienced occasional bladder infections that he'd treated with antibiotics, but he never connected them to his fishing habits. One weekend, James spent a full Saturday on the lake, holding his urine for nearly 8 hours. By that evening, he felt a familiar burning sensation, along with lower abdominal pressure. He decided to wait until Monday to call his doctor, figuring he'd dealt with this before. But by Sunday afternoon, everything changed. James developed a fever of 103 degrees, severe pain in his right flank, and began vomiting uncontrollably. His wife rushed him to the emergency room, where tests revealed that the bladder infection had traveled to his right kidney, causing acute infection with early signs of kidney abscess formation. James was admitted immediately, placed on intravenous antibiotics, and monitored closely. He spent 5 days in the hospital, and even after discharge, it took more than 3 months for his kidney function to return to normal. The doctor explained that years of repeatedly holding his urine had gradually weakened his protective valves through chronic pressure exposure. According to medical data, ascending kidney infections in people over 65 carry a mortality risk of up to 15% if not treated promptly, and even with successful treatment, repeated kidney infections can lead to chronic kidney disease. James's story had a positive ending because he got treatment in time and completely changed his habits afterward. He now uses the bathroom every 2 hours without exception and has had no recurrence in 3 years. So what can you actually do starting today to protect yourself? First, and most important, establish a regular voiding schedule. Use the bathroom every 2 to 3 hours during your waking hours, even if you don't feel a strong urge. Set reminders on your phone if needed. This one habit prevents all 5 problems we've discussed. Second, maintain adequate hydration throughout the day, aiming for urine that's pale yellow, rather than dark or concentrated. Third, practice complete bladder emptying, taking the time to relax and ensure you've fully voided. Fourth, consider preventive supplements that have strong research support, like D-mannose and cranberry extract. And finally, recognize warning signs early. Burning with urination, cloudy or foul-smelling urine, increased frequency or urgency, and any blood in your urine are all signs that you need medical evaluation right away. If this video helped you better understand what's happening with your body and why that habit of holding your urine might be more dangerous than you realized, imagine what the next ones can do for your health. Subscribe to the channel right now and join thousands of people who have already transformed their relationship with intimate health. Here you'll find more than just medical information. You'll find understanding, practical solutions, and a community that knows exactly what you're going through. Click subscribe, activate notifications, and together let's build a life with less pain and more well-being. Your health deserves this attention. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.